Welcome back to another powerful episode of the Service First podcast, where we explore the power of putting a commitment to others first in business and in life. Join us as we sit down with industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and everyday people who are making a positive impact through their commitment to service. Get ready to be inspired, learn from the best, and discover how you too can put service first. Episode 7 of the Service First podcast. We got Art Tippets. Art is our Beverage Director for the company, and just here to kind of hear his story and hear his perspective on the service industry and really a career with blue collar, a career behind the bar, just happy to have you here. So thanks for doing it. Mm-hmm. So to get started, if you don't mind, just kind of introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so Art Tippets. Started with the company back in 2001 when I moved to Jackson, Wyoming from Salt Lake City, Utah. My first job with the company was actually in the wine shop with the original Sidewinders, and also I was a door guy for all the shows that they used to have. So I was a bouncer.
You were a bouncer?
Yep.
No way.
Yep. Which was pretty fun. I had some pretty fun shows there.
Yeah, I want to hear about that. Not to interrupt you, but I've heard stories about the shows that they had at Sidewinders back in the day. But
yep, maybe
you can tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. Had some good buddies that bartended there as well. Sam, Nick. They were with the company for a long time as well. But I guess one of the things I remember in particular about those shows and bouncing was the dining room floor turned into the dance floor basically. And then I had that stage in the far back area where the band would set up. And some of the bands that would come through there, if you remember, there was a basement down there. And it was actually pretty terrifying that when the crowd would start bouncing around, that whole floor would flex, and I would always stand on the edge of the doorway in case it collapsed.
Yeah.
It was pretty scary.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How many people would show up for those shows?
Hundreds.
Really?
Yeah, a few hundred people, 2, 3, I don't.
Do you remember any of the shows off the top of your head really stand out? I've heard about the Kiss cover band, and
there was, Robert O'Keefe used to play there all the time. The Young Dubliners played there a handful of times. Burning Spear played there. Those are the ones that just stick out right now. But yeah. So that was one of the go-to venues in Jackson at the time. Yeah, for sure.
Crazy. So you said you started in the wine shop. Mm-hmm. Was that your first job in Jackson, or had you worked anywhere else before that?
I was actually working for Mountain Movers there when I very, very first moved there. So I was actually doing all three. I was working for a moving company during the day. I was doing the wine shop, I think, on the weekends, and then at nights, whenever they had shows, I was working the door.
And you had moved to Jackson from Salt Lake, mm-hmm. right? Or Salt Lake area, mm-hmm. somewhere. And that's where you grew up?
Yep.
So you moved to Jackson when you were 18 or right after high school, or what?
Nah, I think I was 22.
Okay.
Right around there.
Why'd you move to Jackson?
Ski.
Big diehard skier, huh?
Yep. Was.
No. Was. Yeah, you still ski.
Yeah.
Couple knee surgeries later or whatever.
Yep.
So did you go to college before?
I went to
Jackson?
Salt Lake Community College for just under 2 years, and it just wasn't really for me.
So what were you doing in Salt Lake after high school, between Salt Lake and Jackson?
All kinds of things. I was actually in the service industry in Salt Lake for a short period.
Okay.
I worked at, I don't know if you're familiar with the Oyster Bar and Market Street Grill down
mm-hmm.
there.
Yeah.
So I worked at the Market Street Grill, and I was actually back of house.
Really?
I did all the desserts.
No way.
That was my first service industry job. So that was mostly nights. And at the same time, I was tuning skis and renting skis at a ski shop.
Mm-hmm. So, and that was after high school?
Yep.
And then, so you were already pretty passionate about skiing through high school and after that when you were in community college in Salt Lake. And then was Jackson just kind of known as like, if you're really into skiing, it's the place to go, or what?
Yeah, but I guess so. I'd been traveling to Jackson with my buddy Sam for a number of years through high school. We would actually travel up to Jackson and camp out up on Shadow Mountain in the summertime to mountain bike. That was like the one reason that we would go there.
Okay.
And then it turned out they had great skiing too. So
did you and Sam, we're talking about Sam Green.
Yep.
Did you go to high school together?
We went to junior high together.
Really?
Yeah, we've known each other since we were, 13, 14 years old?
Whoa.
30 years.
Yeah, so Sam and his wife Erica also worked with us at Sidewinders. All three of you were there when I first started.
Yep.
So you started off in the wine shop and bouncing, and what was your lifestyle like at that time where you were, living in Jackson, you're 22 years old and working a bunch of different jobs?
Just so much fun, man. Just total ski bum and embraced it, Living with a bunch of dudes in a house and, people sleeping in pantries and garages and yeah, just like working our asses off in the summertime so we could ski in the wintertime, and life was good.
Yeah. I remember even when I was growing up in Jackson that was kind of like a big part of the culture at Sidewinders. Was like all the bartenders it was like you would bartend at night, and it really wasn't even just Sidewinders. I felt like that was the story I heard a lot of places around Jackson, was like you ski during the day and bartend at night.
It was like pretty heavy culture there.
When I talked to Tracy on the podcast, she was talking about how when she moved to Jackson, which was probably, I guess, around the same time you moved there, or no, I guess she was maybe a little earlier. But anyways, she said that everybody was like either retail or restaurants. And that was pretty much like what everybody did for work. One story I've always heard about you is working in the wine shop is that you were always reading a book. What kind of books were you reading?
Jeez. Anything and everything, from, I don't know, I'm a big Kurt Vonnegut fan. Read a lot of his books.
What are they about?
Mostly fiction. Slaughterhouse-Five, if you ever read that book. Great book. They're all short reads. They're all with, around 100 to 150 pages roughly.
Like novels?
Yep. Yeah, but he's just, I don't know, I think he has a very dry sense of humor, but he's hilarious, and I just enjoy reading him.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
I've been reading so much nonfiction stuff recently that I was just thinking about this over the weekend. Oh, here's Ellie with the gift for you that I left at home. Thanks, Ellie.
You're welcome.
But I want to pick up some novels just to take a break from nonfiction stuff because I'm like burned out right now.
Yeah. I usually read, well, at the time I was mostly reading nonfiction, but I read everything. I would read the newspaper front to back every single day.
Really?
Yeah. Like all the classified ads, everything. I would just skim through the entire newspaper.
It was probably a good way to pass the time when you're working in the wine shop.
Yep.
Was it a busy, like, retail storefront at that time?
Busier than
the one
we have there now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it just seemed like a good job at the time, or like they just happened to be hiring, or were you like interested in wine and spirits and stuff?
I was trying to get my foot in the door to bartend.
Okay.
And, at that time, everybody who was bartending, like, nobody was going anywhere. But I just figured, I'll get my foot in the door somehow. And, with working in the wine shop, I could learn about, the beer, the wine. And then also working the door. I would be working with the bartenders and get to
Right.
know them, and yeah, that was my ultimate goal.
Because Sam was already bartending at the time.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah, Sam, Nick, Graham, Rona. I think she was the bar manager. She was the bar manager at the
I
time.
never knew her. So you were basically like skiing with those guys during the day, and then everybody working together at Sidewinders at night.
Yep.
That's funny. How did that transition take place from you working, in the retail store, the wine shop, which is really a liquor store, like not just a wine shop, right?
Yep.
And then how did you get your first opportunity bartending?
Was when they closed down Sidewinders to build the new one. Joe had purchased Betty Rock at that time, and they needed servers, and so I just started serving at Betty Rock, and I think I had a conversation with Graham about how to get behind the bar, and he was just like, start waiting tables, and try to just work your way there, and that's the time when Joe tells me I was the worst server of all time.
I didn't want to bring it up.
Yep.
I'm glad we got that out on the table. So you were waiting tables at Betty Rock and apparently just doing a terrible job at it.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, you're super introverted. And you're a quiet guy. Like, what was that experience like, going to start waiting tables?
It was nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough thing, man. I mean, not everybody has the personality to be a great server, right? So that had to be challenging for you, and then, but eventually you got it figured out because you ended up being a long-term career bartender, basically.
Yep.
What are some things that stood out to you as far as tricks to the trade, or how you would navigate the conversations and build those relationships with customers?
I don't know, man. I guess I think I was still pretty reserved when I was waiting tables at Betty Rock. It wasn't until I got behind the bar at the new Sidewinders that I kind of really had to adapt to that, and being more outspoken with the customers and kind of putting myself out there. That was definitely challenging, but I guess just observing the other bartenders, Graham, Sam. Sam was phenomenal with his customers, man, is crazy. But yeah, I guess just kind of observing them and learning from them. And
yeah, Sam has that personality that he's just almost just a natural.
Yep.
In those customer interactions, and he's funny and relaxed, and but I remember when I first started working with you guys, and I mean the bar at Sidewinders is a busy place, and being able to balance that, the responsibilities of being in this production zone, pouring drinks for the whole restaurant, and then also serving the customers in front of you.
For sure.
I learned a lot about bartending by watching all of you guys.
Yeah.
What did you like about bartending more than serving?
It's probably going to sound a little bit weird, but the barrier of the bar, having that gap between us for some reason.
Yeah.
But it sounds weird because as a bartender, you're also on display for everybody.
Right.
So I don't know. I just felt comfortable back there.
Yeah. And I think it's cool too that you always have this. You're always balancing the responsibility of making drinks for the restaurant, or for, whereas waiting tables, you're not really producing anything. Everything is either coming from the bar or from the kitchen. Whereas as a bartender, you're balancing that. You have this ongoing task of tickets printing and having to pour drinks and stuff, while also balancing that with the customers. What kind of customer, or so you started bartending for the first time at the current original location of Sidewinders in Jackson. What kind of customers were coming in?
Say mostly regulars. We had a really good regular base at that at that place. Obviously, things changed over time as Jackson became more of a tourist destination and all that. But, middle class folks.
Were you working like full time as a bartender?
Yep.
Um,
Well, I guess in the beginning at the new Sidewinders, I was still waiting tables and bartending. I was doing both.
Were you waiting tables at Sidewinders
Yep.
or still at Betty Rock?
Sidewinders.
Okay.
Yeah, just Sidewinders.
How have you seen like the concept change? I mean, you've been around almost since the very beginning of the brand, Sidewinders. Like, what things stand out to you as how it's changed over 20 plus years?
The structure of it for sure. It's definitely much more structured at this point, but not in a bad way.
Just in terms of like the brand itself, or like how we staff the restaurants, or what?
I think everything.
Okay. How did that impact you? I mean, you were still bartending as your primary occupation until you moved to Jackson, or until you moved to Bozeman, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you saw a little bit of that structure get implemented while you were still like behind the bar full time.
Yep.
How did that impact you as a team member, or, as a bartender?
In a more positive way. You remember that, back in the day when we were bartending, like we didn't really have, like us as bartenders were the managers essentially too.
Yep.
Like we were doing all the comps, we were handling difficult customers or difficult situations, having to come out from behind the bar.
Yep.
We didn't have expos, so seeing that structure come into place made our jobs a lot easier for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do remember that was one of the things that stood out to me, especially the bartenders that would work during lunch at Sidewinders. Like, I remember I worked with Nick during the day a lot, Nick and Sammy and Erica. And, they would take a section of tables plus the bar, and then they're like, we didn't have, like you said, we didn't have expos or food runners or whatever. And so constantly having to run to the kitchen and go grab food. It was not better or worse necessarily, but there were things about that I think helped all of you guys become really good at that job. Where you really had to hustle. You didn't have the support that you could lean on.
Yep.
That's something that I feel like we are, trying to figure out that balance of, how much support do you give the team to ensure, high quality product and service versus like how much do you kind of need to pull that safety net out from under them, to help them get better at their job, become a more competent bartender, a more competent server. What's your perspective on that?
I agree. I think that, you can definitely, it can become too much, I guess. You become too reliant on that support. I don't think it necessarily makes you lazy, but you're always, think it's going to be there, I guess, Do
you think it's helped us, like, I guess, if we're not becoming lazy, like what else are we allocating that time or those resources to, And I think that in a lot of ways the level, like the product that we've been able to put out has been improved because we have those additional resources and people to lean on. Like behind the bar, 10 years ago, the cocktails at Sidewinders looked a little different than they do today, which you've been a huge part of that. But I don't know that you would have had the time and capacity to make all those great cocktails when you're without that additional support staff.
For sure.
That was definitely, from my perspective, that's one of the big impacts that you've made on all of our restaurants, but the improvement of kind of the mixology, the craft cocktails, the spirit selection across the board. When did you get interested in all of that?
I was always kind of interested in it. I just never went after it until, I guess, moving here. But yeah, it's something I always just loved, the cocktail scene. Cocktails, like, the classic cocktails are my favorite. But yeah.
Would you like make things for people like when you were bartending at Sidewinders, even though we had such, I don't want to say basic cocktails, but
I would try. If I were to taste them today, I'd probably be disappointed in myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you go about like honing that skill now?
Just trial and error.
Yeah.
Still, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I still will play around with some spirits behind the bar here at Tanglewood, and think I have a great idea and put it together and taste it, and it's not good.
It's a creative endeavor, so you're going to have wins and losses. Like, not everything you put out, it's kind of an artistic thing, it's like some of it's going to be really great and some of it's not. And to your point, like it just requires the, having some vulnerability and saying, hey, I'm going to try this, but it might not be very good.
Yep.
You think some of our like bartenders that you have worked alongside have like bought into that, or do you see that creativity kind of flowing through the bartending staff now?
Some of them, yeah, for sure.
Do you encourage that?
Mm-hmm.
What, like if we have a brand new bartender joining the crew today, like what kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I guess I just tell them to, ask questions, ask as many questions as you want. Don't feel like you're ever asking a dumb question, because you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just tell them, I kind of give them a lot of free rein behind the bar to experiment with cocktails, I think that's the best way to get them to experiment and like kind of find their styles and their flavors and expanding on that,
Yeah, bartending is interesting in that way. I mean, it's kind of like cooking, where you kind of have to like develop a palate. You have to work on those like culinary skills, or behind the bar, the mixology skills, in order to really understand how you would change something to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
At this point in your career, what are the things that you like to focus on, in your day to day? I mean, because you're no longer bartending full time, so your role now is in supporting and advising our teams of bartenders and our location bar managers. What's that transition been like for you?
It's been good. Excuse me. It's been good. Believe it or not, I still miss being behind the bar, but I still get to be back there from time to time, with the support side of things, and I try to do that as much as possible. I guess one of my big things with my bartenders is I just really enjoy getting to know them on a personal level. And so a lot of what I do when I'm, while I'm supporting them behind the bar during service is, I'm talking to them and getting to know them. What'd you do this week? What are you doing? You got any trips planned? Where are you from? Like, what's your background? And just really, getting to know them. I enjoy it. Yeah,
like right when I came to get you for recording this podcast, you were up behind the bar at Tanglewood talking to one of our bartenders there, and I think you like walked into a conversation. She was like asking you about your family or something.
Yep.
I think you were telling her you have, so tell us about your family. Like, what do you have, siblings, and what do your parents do and everything?
Yeah, so my dad's retired, but he worked for the government for a long time in Salt Lake City. My mom was a teacher for a long time. She also had a part-time job with the airlines, so we could travel.
Cool.
But I have 3 brothers and 1 sister, and they're all married, kids. They're all still in the Salt Lake area, except for one brother. He's actually in Jackson.
Is that the brother that I met that
probably
was, he did like geographical work and stuff?
Yep. Yeah, he did that for a while. Now he's a sound engineer, so he does, you're familiar with like the Center for the Arts in Jackson and like the Rendezvous Fest that they just had. Like he does the sound for all the big shows there. And
that's a cool job.
Yep.
Marcus has taught me a lot, and just learning about like simple sound setup for the podcast and stuff was pretty interesting. I can't imagine doing it for like a big concert. And then you've got all the different instruments and stuff. But yeah, I met, what's his name again?
Sean.
Sean, yeah. I met him years ago. We were doing a road trip through southern Utah, and he was like the encyclopedia of this, like all the parks and everything, and gave us some really cool routes to go. So shout out to Sean for helping plan a really cool road trip.
Nice.
So the rest of your family's all still in the Salt Lake area, and you get to see him very often, or
A couple times a year.
Yeah.
Make a trip down there, yeah.
you said that your mom had a part-time job with the airlines, and you guys traveled. Where would you travel to?
Usually Mexico. My mom's from Mexico City, so
okay.
a lot of family down there, so most of our traveling was down in Mexico City, the Yucatan Peninsula, all over. Yeah.
So do you have like a lot of like Mexican influence in your family, or just?
I mean, yeah. You know, I grew up like eating the best Mexican food, you know, around, and helping my mom and grandma cook as a kid, and they kind of instilled that in me. I love cooking, and yeah. Grandma's still alive. She is 103.
Whoa.
She makes it to September. She'll be 104.
No way.
She's still going strong.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so was your mom then like a first generation immigrant, or, I mean?
Nope. Her parents were, but she was, I believe my mom was born in Mexico City.
So she did. I mean, she immigrated at some point to the U.S. That's awesome. So you still have family in Mexico too. So that's why. You guys would travel back and forth and go see them and stuff.
Yep.
I've never been to Mexico.
You haven't?
No, but it's like definitely on the top of my list to go. My brother goes like every year, and he keeps on telling me I need to go.
Yeah, you gotta get down there.
What was your like upbringing like in Salt Lake?
It was good. You know, grew up in kind of with a religious background, you know. We grew up Mormon. Pretty reserved neighborhood, you know, suburb of Salt Lake. But I had a great childhood growing up there. Loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Salt Lake's kind of known for that type of, you know, culture there and everything. I mean, did that have anything to do with you, like, wanting to get out and go to Jackson?
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of wanted to just see what else was out there.
Yeah, because there's some of that in Jackson, too. I mean, I remember when I moved to Jackson as a kid, it was like the first time I'd ever even heard of the Mormon church and all of that. But some of the nicest people I knew, one of my best friends growing up in high school was, you know, part of the LDS church and stuff. But I'd never even heard of it growing up in Atlanta until I was like 12 years old. Then I moved there. And so, let's see. You got to Jackson, and then worked as a full-time bartender at Sidewinders, and you were skiing and mountain biking still, and all of that. Do you still get to do any of that now?
Yeah, not quite as much. Mostly just from banging up my body over the years, doing those things. But yeah.
You had some pretty intense surgeries not that long ago, right? Knee surgery?
Yep. Total of 4.
4 knee surgeries?
On the same knee.
Oh my God. And you can still ski?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Not like I used to, but yeah.
Yeah, I remember, man, you guys used to be like really good skiers. I went out with you a few times. I was like, I don't know if I can keep up.
I thought so, but you know, there's always somebody better than you.
Yeah, for sure. Especially being in Jackson, man. The ski culture there is wild. We used to show all the ski movies and stuff on
Yep.
the TVs at Sidewinders.
Mhm.
That was fun. What else do you like to do? Outside of bartending, what are like talking about getting to know the bartenders that you work with, like on a personal level? Like, what are the types of things that you share with them in terms of like so they can get to know you? What are you passionate about outside of?
Just those
The
things,
restaurants.
I try to ski with them if I can, and
Mhm.
mountain bike with a few of them.
Do you have any hobbies or interests? I know you guys bought a house recently, so you've been DIYing some stuff at your house.
Yep, been doing a lot of that over the last 2 years.
How's that going?
Still going.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Any like big challenges with the house?
wallpaper.
Yeah.
I'll never do that again.
Didn't you do some construction work or something at one point?
Yeah, I've actually off and on when I was still living in Salt Lake. I roofed houses for a long time. I also this would have been my last year of high school and maybe the year or two after that. I also laid tile
Yep.
for a
I
long
remember
time.
you telling me that.
I was an apprentice
Hmm.
for a tile company, and yeah, did a bunch of construction. I always helped my dad do stuff growing up too. My dad was pretty hands-on, good at building things, and
So, what type of projects have you taken on at your house?
we have remodeled 2 of the bathrooms. So flooring,
The tile
walls
work came in
painting.
handy.
Yep. Still hate it.
Yeah. I remodeled a bathroom when we lived in Jackson, and I remember asking you about like for advice on the tile work and stuff, and it was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. But one was enough.
Yep.
I don't know if I would want to do that much more. And then one thing I wanted to ask you about too is so your girlfriend Megan, you guys have been. I mean, she works in the company too. Has been a career server as well. What's the? I mean, like Ellie and I work together, and I think a lot of people ask about what it's like working with your significant other. Do you have any input on that or advice for people that are maybe getting into that same type of situation?
I don't know. I think her and I have a pretty unique relationship in the sense that we're able to do that. We don't actually work together a whole lot. When we do, I would say don't bring any work home with you.
Yeah.
That's been a big one for us.
Yeah.
If you're, sometimes I work a lot and, you just got to leave it here.
Yeah, I mean, you guys kind of have separate things going a little bit. I think that's been helpful. Like when Ellie and I have talked about it, I talked about it with Joe and Denise, on their podcast, and just a lot over the years trying to figure out how to balance that. Working full time with each other. And one of the things that they've always said that I thought was really good input is just making sure, like everybody kind of has, not everybody, but just making sure you kind of have your separate roles and knowing what you do so that you're not like stepping on each other's toes. Right. Like, Denise tells the story of like cooking with Joe at Mary Piglet's, and then how once they moved on and opened Sidewinders or Blue Moon Diner and Sidewinders and everything else, like that really helped them kind of find their own space from each other.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think like Riley and Avery, I mean, there's countless examples of people that end up, whether you meet in the restaurants or not, but end up working together with a significant other is challenging but also extremely rewarding, right? So yeah, other than mountain biking and skiing and stuff, and reading, which we already touched on, like what are the other things in your life that you like to share with your team?
I don't know. I mean, we love our dogs, they're like children to us.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time with them.
What kind of dogs?
2 Siberian Huskies.
And Bella, your older one, Bella, right? You've had her for a long time.
Yeah, I believe I didn't get her as a puppy, but I'm pretty sure she's going to be 13 this year. Mm-hmm. So I've had her for quite a while.
Yeah, that's pretty good for a big dog like that. She's still doing good?
She's doing great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she might make it to 15, 16. Yeah.
She's a sweet dog. How are you guys? I mean, you've been in Bozeman now, what, for like 4 years?
A little over 4 years.
You guys like living here?
Yeah, we do.
Was that a tough move, like coming from Jackson?
It was. Yeah, it wasn't easy. There was, most of the challenges were moving to a place where you don't really know anybody and trying to figure that out and kind of navigating a new place,
What made you want to leave Jackson?
We just needed to change, I think, Another big factor was we wanted to own a home, and that just wasn't going to happen in Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, Ellie and I that was a big part of our decision leaving Jackson too. Both of us having grown up there, it's still home in a lot of ways, but man, when we were, getting ready to get married and stuff, looking at the future and saying, where's our most realistic opportunity to have the quality of life that we're looking for and, build a family and everything, it just didn't seem like that was, I mean, not that it can't be done in Jackson, it just wasn't really the road that we were looking to travel. So Bozeman seemed like a really great opportunity, similar lifestyle and stuff, but
right.
Just a lot more affordable at the time. So yeah, you guys were able to achieve that goal of owning a house and stuff. Are you happy that you made that decision?
Yeah, we're super stoked on it,
And you still get to go back to Jackson fairly often.
Yep.
Like you were just there not that long ago, right? For the new Sidewinders.
Yep.
What was that experience like?
It was great. It's really cool seeing, a lot of the people on the West Bank were really, really stoked to have somewhere, another option on that side of the valley.
Because that's where you lived when you lived in Jackson, right?
Yeah, I lived in Wilson for, I think, like 15 or so of the 18 years I lived there.
Wow. Yeah, and there was the Stagecoach and Nora's and not a whole lot else out there, right?
Nope.
So when you were there, you saw people that you knew, like living in Wilson?
Yeah, a lot of old friends that I haven't seen in a couple of years. They have families now too, which is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. But yeah, a lot of familiar faces for sure.
Yeah, when I was there getting ready for the opening, one of my good friends from high school came out to meet me and see the restaurant and stuff, and we went to lunch at Stagecoach and ran into one of my old football coaches. He walked in and he's like, "What are you doing at my bar?" He's hilarious. But yeah, man, that's one thing I do miss a little bit about Jackson is just that small town, like super small town, real small town vibe where you never know who you're going to run into. Seemed like, I mean, Bozeman has a little bit of that too, but it's hard to replace with a small community like Jackson.
Right.
Were you guys both on board with the move, or was there any dynamic of, hey, let's go and see if we like it and maybe we'll come back, or were you pretty committed to staying?
We were both pretty ready for it. We had actually, Megan and I had been talking about making a move just on our own, and it just kind of coincidentally was when I got a call from Joe and asking to meet with you and him, and then was given the opportunity to come up here, and so it just seemed like it was meant to be.
So you were already thinking about leaving Jackson?
Yep.
Where else would you have gone?
We hadn't really decided yet. We were kind of in the beginning stages of figuring that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think we feel very fortunate that ended up working out. We've had not a ton, but a few key people end up moving up from Jackson. They've been a huge part of carrying the culture over and, kind of helping bridge the gap between the Jackson and Bozeman markets. Mm-hmm. And when you guys first moved here, it was just Sidewinders, right?
Just Sidewinders, and Tanglewood was in the works.
Yeah.
and foxtrot.
And so you started off as like a full-time bar manager at Sidewinders, right?
Yep.
And that was your first like managerial position, right?
Yeah, for the most part, I had a tiny bit of experience running a landscaping crew, but a really small crew. It was like 4 or 5 people, for a couple of summers. But other than that, really no.
Did you always work 2 or like multiple jobs while you lived in Jackson?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember when I first met you, you were doing the landscaping thing like during the day, during the summertime,
Yep.
and then bartending at night. The shift into like bar management versus bartending, what was that like for you?
It was interesting. It wasn't easy, just trying to find, my own style of management, but at the same time also just, knowing the bartenders that were here had been here for a while and trying to just, I guess, find some sort of acceptance with them without, stepping on anybody's toes. And, they had things pretty dialed already, so that was actually nice for me. But yeah, it was a learning.
Yeah, I mean, I remember working through that together and, trying to build off of one another and helping develop that management or leadership style. How would you describe your management style?
I don't know. I guess, I mean, I'm myself as much as possible. And I just really enjoy getting to know everybody that I work with. And, I feel like we have a lot in common when it comes to the bartending world.
Yeah.
Because I've done it. I've just done it for a long time. And I don't know.
Yeah, I remember it being a pretty easy introduction from my perspective when we were telling the team here, like, okay, we got this guy moving up from Jackson that's going to like take over the bar management role. It wasn't really, we weren't really too concerned about it because you had the, total credibility with the team and just being able to say, hey, he's been a long-term bartender at Sidewinders. He knows what he's doing. He can, you could jump in there and help out. And didn't you come up and help out like even before you moved here a little bit?
Yep, I came up for the opening of the Bozeman Sidewinders.
That's right. What do you think you've learned from, whether it's Sidewinders here and just the volume, how busy that bar is and stuff, or the opening of additional restaurants that you've been able to like translate now that you're also plugged into the Jackson restaurants still and helping develop other bar managers and bartenders?
The biggest thing I've learned, especially with Sidewinders in particular, is, now that we have 3 of them, they all operate completely differently. Even though they're the same concept, like those bars are
just the layout and stuff.
The layout, everything, the people, it's just very, they're all very different. I didn't really expect that. I expected that maybe we could run them all the same, and you can't.
What are, like, operationally, when you talk about running them differently, what are the things that you do differently?
Staffing for sure is one of them. The Sidewinders here in Bozeman is such high volume, it's crazy.
Just like having the service bartender,
Yep.
which we don't do at the other locations and stuff. Part of that's just the number of dining room seats we have at this restaurant, right? And it's like you kind of need a dedicated person that's just making drinks for the restaurant.
For sure. And the bar is huge.
Yeah.
It's like, what, 40, close to 40 seats at the bar?
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of a crazy concept when we were designing that building. Honestly, looking back at some of the decisions that we were making at that time, where it's kind of wild that we actually followed through on like the keg room being upstairs and figuring out that keg lift, the draft system where all the lines come down through the stove pipe, and
It's
just
wild.
all like pieced together, but it works.
Yep.
The experience as a bartender in I don't want to say, it's not lower volume. The Sidewinders in Jackson is still very busy, but then coming up here, like what was that like for you, adapting to the higher volume and adapting to a bigger restaurant and stuff?
I was definitely out of my comfort zone. I knew that I could handle it, but it was also just not really knowing the bar itself. Like you said, the layout of everything is different. It was fun. I really enjoyed learning to work behind a new bar and work with some new people. And
What are the things operationally that are important to you, whether it's in one of our restaurants or if you go to another bar or another restaurant to look at? What do you look for in terms of assessing whether they're running a good operation or not?
One of the bigger cleanliness behind the bar, organization behind the bar, probably the two biggest things.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about sometimes you can go in and just smell a dirty bar, right? It's not something we never want to see. What are some of the other places around, Bozeman that you've experienced after, living here for a few years that, where else do you like to go as a patron?
I mean, I've always loved dive bars, so that's kind of, my thing. But, yeah, I don't know. Pop into the Hideaway from time to time. They have a great Philly cheesesteak.
Nice. We're getting ready next week to go tour one of our local breweries in Bozeman. That's one big difference between Jackson and Bozeman is just the number of breweries that we have here. How has working with all of them expanded your knowledge and experience with beer?
It's been amazing, having access to that many breweries, and then, having all of that information accessible all the time is incredible. When they volunteer to come in and do staff trainings whenever we want to, and we can take a tour of their breweries whenever we want to, and it's super informative, and it's a game changer, really.
Yeah, I mean, some of the beers that you guys get into are I never thought that those would be popular.
Yeah.
But I mean, between you and Riley, Riley took over managing the bar after we opened the restaurants in the Market Building, and the beer tastings that you guys would set up, and the really obscure beers that you would bring on. I never thought that they would be as popular as they are. And now it's kind of not taken over, but it's an even bigger part of the draft list today than it was 4 years ago.
Yep.
And even some of the price points that people pay for those beers. I mean, would you say that the customer base at Sidewinders has become more not beer snob, but beer centric, I guess?
For sure, yeah.
Because I mean, the Sidewinders in Jackson forever, I think Bud Light was our number one seller, or Budweiser, right? For forever.
Yep.
And maybe it still is, but that has never been the case here.
No.
People are more into the
craft side of things.
Craft, yeah.
Yep.
What's if somebody wants to buy you a beer, what kind of beer are they buying you?
Oh man.
Or what kind of beer do you want them to buy you, I should say?
I love Belgian style beers. They're my favorite. Wit beers, Hefeweizens, true Belgian or German.
Are they accessible? I mean, are they common with our?
Not super common, but yeah, you can get them.
What's the difference between a beer like that and a IPA or something that most people would go for?
I don't know. IPAs are a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. And there's some great ones out there. I like the complexity of those Weiss beers a lot. You get a lot of coriander, banana, vanilla notes out of them. And yeah.
Just a little more complex.
Yep.
When you're judging, we get approached by breweries all the time, like wanting to get their beers on our menu and stuff. What do you look for in assessing the quality of the beers or the quality of the brewery in general?
I like to ask questions and just try to find out how much knowledge they actually have about their own beer. Do they really know? Are they just going for the run of the mill just to get, a tap handle, or do they actually have some good quality beers that deserve?
Yeah, with like over a dozen breweries just in the Gallatin Valley now. Every time I've sat in on those meetings with you, I always like to try to ask that question of like, if you have an elevator pitch as a brewery, like how do you differentiate yourself from every other brewery in town? We've heard some good answers recently. Like when we sat down with those guys from Shred Monk downtown, they're like, we focus on low ABV beers. I thought that was cool, you know, that they, it's kind of like one easy, not an easy way, but like just kind of like a lowest common denominator descriptor for what they do. Like, what do you want to be known for, right? So that's cool. I'm excited for that brewery tour next week. So we're going to Bridger Brewing, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's gonna be really cool. They have really, really cool facility. You've been out there, right?
Once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's state of the art. So cool.
Massive.
Yeah, it's huge.
I'm pumped for that, just to kind of get to see the behind the scenes and stuff. Have you ever gotten into brewing anything? Have you ever done any like home brewing or anything like that?
I did some home brewing a long time ago before I moved to Jackson, and I thought it was great. It was probably awful.
Terrible. That was like, I guess that was really the start of the whole craft beer movement. Everybody was home brewing there for a long time. But you never, I don't feel like you hear about it that much anymore.
There's still some people here in Bozeman that do.
Really?
Yeah, there's a home brew store down in Four Corners that sells all home brew equipment.
Really?
Yep. So
it's to go check that out.
Definitely still a thing for them to be in business.
Yeah.
So.
Well, cool, man. Well, I have something for you. Basically, just because as a friend, I wanted to get you a gift, but also, part of this, doing the podcast. I know it's not something that were like super looking forward to because you're so introverted and all of that. So I wanted to say thank you for doing the podcast, and also because, like you said earlier, you've been with the company for over 20 years, and that's an amazing accomplishment and something that you're super thankful for, and would love to encourage, and I appreciate that you're setting that example for everybody. So anyways, I have this gift for you. If you want to open it, that'd be awesome. It's nothing like that crazy, and I don't want to say the fact that you've been around for 20 plus years, this is what you get for it, but I thought it would be something that you might like. So nice. So Art's a big sneakerhead, and probably has more Vans than I've ever seen. Like every other week he's coming in with a new pair of Vans. So
those are cool.
We got him a cool pair of Vans skate highs. So
hell yeah, dude! Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are sweet.
Well, I appreciate you doing this, man. Anything else you wanted to close with or say to your team or anything like that?
Nah, just keep up the good work.
Yeah.
Excited for the future, really,
Yeah. Yeah, me too. It'll be fun to build the next bar with you and continue to grow the team. So thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Service First podcast. Join us on our mission to spread the word and inspire others to lead with a service first mindset by sharing this episode with your friends and colleagues. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the Service First podcast on your favorite platform. We can't wait to connect with you and continue this important conversation about service, community, and leadership.